My friends, we live in a world where freedom is cherished. People fight for it, long for it, and pray for it. But let me tell you something today. Freedom does not come easily. It is not a gift handed to us without cost. Freedom comes with a price that is written in courage. Throughout history, men and women have stood on the front lines, willing to give everything they had so that others might live in liberty. They knew that freedom is never truly free. It demands sacrifice. It demands bravery. It demands courage from those who are willing to face opposition, to stand firm in their convictions, and to press forward when everything around them seems to say, retreat. Courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is moving forward in spite of fear. It's standing tall when others run away. It's choosing to stand for what's right, even when the world stands against you. Courage says, I will not be silent. I will not be swayed. I will not bow down to fear. And friends, we need that kind of courage today more than ever. We need the courage to stand up for our beliefs, the courage to defend the truth, the courage to protect the values that give meaning and purpose to our lives. We cannot be complacent. We cannot let fear or doubt rob us of the freedom that so many before us have fought for. True freedom is not just the ability to do what we want. It's the ability to live out our God-given purpose, to be who He has called us to be. But that freedom in the deepest sense of the word, requires courage. It requires the courage to walk the path of righteousness, to stand for truth when lies are easier to believe, and to live in the light when darkness calls out to us. Let us remember that courage doesn't always roar. Sometimes courage is the quiet voice that says, I will rise again tomorrow. It's the determination to keep moving forward, even when the road is hard. It's the faith that God is with us, guiding us, strengthening us, and giving us the boldness to live free. The price of freedom is written in courage. And today, each of us has the chance to write our own story, our own chapter in the ongoing fight for freedom. Let us write it with courage, and let that courage be our legacy. Freedom comes at a cost. True freedom is never free. It requires sacrifice and courage from those willing to fight for it. Courage is facing fear, not the absence of it. Being courageous does not mean having no fear, but rather standing firm despite fear and opposition. Standing for truth requires boldness. Defending our beliefs and values takes strength, especially when the world stands against us. Freedom is not just about personal choice, but about fulfilling God's calling in our lives. Courage is found in faith and perseverance. Even in difficult times, courage is trusting that God is with us and moving forward with determination. Our legacy is defined by courage. The story of our lives should be written with bravery, leaving behind a legacy of faith and strength. Freedom is one of the most cherished values known to humanity. People long for it, fight for it, and in many cases lay down their lives to secure it. But freedom does not come without a price. It is never handed over freely, nor is it sustained without effort. Every form of freedom, whether it be personal, national, or spiritual, comes at a cost. And that cost is often paid through courage, sacrifice, and unwavering determination. Throughout history, we see countless examples of men and women who were willing to pay that price. They stood against oppression, defied tyranny, and fought for the right to live in liberty. They endured suffering, hardship, and even death so that future generations might walk in freedom. From the battlefields where soldiers have laid down their lives to the movements where individuals have stood firm in the face of injustice, freedom has always been secured by those willing to make sacrifices. Consider the price that was paid by those who have fought for national freedom. The history of any free nation is written in the blood, sweat, and tears of those who believed that liberty was worth any cost. They did not choose the easy road. They did not shrink back when faced with opposition. Instead, they stood their ground, knowing that their struggle would determine the future of their people. Many never lived to see the fruits of their sacrifice. Yet, because of their courage, others were able to live in the freedom they secured. The same principle applies to personal freedom. Many individuals have found themselves trapped in circumstances that seemed impossible to escape, whether it be addiction, fear, oppression, or doubt. But freedom from these chains is not something that comes passively. It requires a deep and unwavering commitment to breaking free no matter the cost. It takes strength to rise up against the forces that seek to hold us down. And it takes perseverance to walk the difficult path toward true liberation. Spiritual freedom is no different. The greatest example of the price of freedom is found in Jesus Christ, who willingly gave his life so that we might be set free from sin and death. He endured suffering, humiliation, and the weight of the world's sin, all so that we could experience true and lasting freedom. His sacrifice was not easy, but it was necessary. And just as he laid down his life for us, we too must be willing to take up our cross and follow him. Spiritual freedom requires surrender, faith, and the courage to stand firm in a world that often opposes the truth. Freedom must also be protected. It is not enough to simply gain freedom. It must be preserved. Many people take for granted the liberties they enjoy without recognizing the sacrifices that were made to secure them. The moment we become complacent, we risk losing what others fought so hard to achieve. Freedom requires vigilance. It requires people who are willing to stand guard, to defend what is right, and to resist anything that seeks to steal, kill, or destroy the liberties that have been won. There will always be those who seek to control, to oppress, and to take away the freedoms that have been secured. But history has shown us time and time again that courage is the key to standing against these forces. It is courage that compels people to rise up against injustice. It is courage that refuses to surrender, even in the face of overwhelming odds. And it is courage that ultimately ensures that freedom endures for future generations. The cost of freedom is great, but its value is immeasurable. Those who have paid the price have done so not only for themselves, but for those who would come after them. Every act of bravery, every sacrifice, and every stand for what is right contributes to the ongoing story of liberty. Courage is often misunderstood. Many believe it to be the absence of fear, a state of mind where doubt and hesitation do not exist. But in reality, courage is not about being fearless. It is about standing firm even when fear is present. It is about pressing forward despite the uncertainty, the danger, and the overwhelming odds. Fear is a natural human response, but courage is a choice, a decision to act in the face of that fear rather than be controlled by it. Throughout history, some of the greatest acts of bravery have not come from those who never felt fear, but from those who refused to let fear dictate their actions. Soldiers on the battlefield have marched forward, knowing that danger was ahead. Leaders of great movements have spoken out even when their voices trembled. Ordinary men and women have stepped up in moments of crisis, not because they had no fear, but because they had something greater than their fear, a conviction that what they were doing was right and necessary. Courage is found in the mother who protects her child against all odds. It is seen in the man who stands for truth when falsehood is more convenient. It is in the heart of the person who faces loss and pain but refuses to give up. Every person faces fear at some point, whether it is fear of failure, fear of rejection, or fear of the unknown. But courage is the force that moves a person forward when fear tries to hold them back. Fear has a way of paralyzing people, of making them hesitate, retreat, or stay silent when they should speak. It whispers doubts into the mind, convincing people that they are not strong enough, not capable enough, not worthy enough. But courage silences that voice. Courage says, even if I am afraid, I will still move forward. Even if I feel weak, I will still take a stand. Even if I do not know what the outcome will be, I will not give in to fear. There is no greater example of this than Jesus Christ himself. In the Garden of Gethsemane, he prayed in agony, knowing the suffering that awaited him. His humanity felt the weight of what was to come. Yet he did not run. He did not turn back. He chose to move forward, to endure, to fulfill the purpose for which he came. His courage was not the absence of fear, but the decision to face it with unwavering faith and trust in God. This same courage is needed in the lives of those who seek to walk in truth and righteousness. Standing for what is right is not always easy. It may bring opposition, ridicule, or hardship. The world often rewards those who conform, who stay silent, who follow the path of least resistance. But true courage means standing firm, even when it is unpopular, even when it is difficult, even when it comes at a cost. Every great victory, every moment of breakthrough, every step forward in life requires courage. It requires the willingness to do what is right, even when it is hard. It requires faith that God is greater than any fear, that he goes before those who trust in him, strengthening and equipping them for the journey ahead. Courage is not about feeling invincible. It is about choosing to act despite feeling afraid. It is about trusting that no matter the challenge, no matter the trial, no matter the fear that tries to take hold, God is greater, and with him, no fear can overcome the heart that chooses to stand in faith. Standing for truth has never been easy. In every generation, there have been forces that seek to silence truth, distort it, or replace it with lies. The world often rewards compromise and punishes those who dare to speak against falsehood. But truth is not something to be molded or reshaped to fit what is convenient. It is unchanging, unwavering, and absolute. And standing for truth requires boldness. Boldness to speak when silence is safer. Boldness to stand when the world pushes back. Boldness to hold firm even when it comes at a cost. Throughout history, those who have stood for truth have faced great opposition. They have been mocked, ridiculed, and persecuted. Many have been cast out of society, rejected by those closest to them, or even given their lives for the sake of truth. But they did not waver, because they understood that truth is worth more than acceptance, more than comfort, more than even life itself. They knew that compromising truth for the sake of convenience was not an option, for once truth is abandoned, everything crumbles. There is no clearer example of this than Jesus Christ. He stood for truth in a world filled with deception. He spoke of righteousness in a time of corruption. He called people to repentance when they preferred to remain in sin. And for this, he was hated. He was betrayed, falsely accused, and crucified. But he did not back down. He did not change his message to make it more acceptable to the crowd. He stood firm, knowing that truth must be proclaimed, no matter the cost. This same boldness is required today. The world is filled with deception, with voices that try to redefine morality, twist reality, and lead people away from the truth of God. There is pressure to conform, to stay silent, to go along with what is popular rather than what is right. But truth does not change to fit the shifting tides of culture. It remains the same, and those who stand for it must be willing to do so even when the world stands against them. Standing for truth does not mean being reckless or argumentative. It does not mean attacking others or seeking to win debates for the sake of pride. It means being unwavering in conviction, speaking with wisdom and love, but never compromising what is right. It means choosing integrity over approval, honesty over deception, and righteousness over popularity. It means being willing to face rejection, knowing that the approval of God is far greater than the approval of man. Fear often holds people back from standing for truth. Fear of what others might think, fear of losing relationships, fear of facing opposition. But boldness is not the absence of fear. It is the decision to move forward despite it. It is the faith that God is greater than any opposition, that He is the source of strength for those who stand in His name. It is the trust that no matter what the world may do, truth will always prevail in the end. The battle for truth is not just fought on grand stages or in history books. It is fought in everyday life. It is fought in the choices made at work, at school, in families, and in friendships. It is fought in the willingness to be honest when deception would be easier, to stand for righteousness when compromise is expected, to speak light into darkness, even when the world prefers to remain in shadows. Those who stand for truth may face trials, but they do not stand alone. God is with them, strengthening them, guiding them, and upholding them. And in the end, it is not the approval of the world that matters, but the faithfulness to the one who is the source of all truth. True freedom is not simply the ability to do whatever one desires. It is not found in living without rules or following every impulse. The world often promotes a version of freedom that is rooted in self-indulgence, in the pursuit of personal gain without responsibility or accountability. But real freedom, the kind that brings peace, purpose, and fulfillment, is found in living according to God's purpose. It is not just about escaping bondage. It is about stepping into the life that He has designed. Many people search for freedom in the wrong places. They chase after wealth, thinking that financial success will liberate them. They seek pleasure, believing that fulfilling every desire will bring satisfaction. They reject authority, assuming that doing things their own way will make them truly free. But time and time again, these things prove to be empty. They leave people restless, searching for something more, trapped in the very things they thought would set them free. The truth is, freedom without purpose is not freedom at all. It is simply another form of bondage. A person who is enslaved to sin, to addiction, to selfishness, or to fear is not truly free, no matter how much power, money, or independence they may have. Real freedom is found only in surrendering to God and walking in His will. It is found in trusting Him, obeying Him, and allowing Him to lead. It is not about following the desires of the flesh, but about being led by the Spirit. Jesus Christ came to set people free, but not in the way that the world expected. He did not come to overthrow governments or break political chains. He came to break the chains of sin, to free people from the burdens that weighed them down, to release them from the hopelessness that kept them bound. He said, "You will know the truth, and the truth will set you free." His freedom is not temporary, it is eternal. It is not external. It transforms the heart from the inside out. Living in God's purpose does not mean that life will always be easy. It does not mean there will be no struggles, no challenges, no difficulties. But it does mean that there is a greater meaning behind every trial, a higher calling beyond every hardship. When a person is walking in God's will, they can endure suffering without being defeated, face opposition without losing faith, and experience difficulties without being overcome by despair. Some people resist surrendering to God because they believe that following Him means losing their freedom. They see His commandments as restrictions rather than protection. They believe that giving their lives to Him means giving up joy, success, or fulfillment. But the opposite is true. The greatest fulfillment, the deepest joy, and the most meaningful success come from walking in alignment with His plan. His ways are not meant to imprison. They are meant to liberate. His truth does not bind. It sets free. When a person steps into their God-given purpose, they are no longer living for themselves, but for something greater. They are no longer bound by the opinions of others, the pressures of society, or the weight of sin. They are no longer living in fear of the future or regret of the past. They are free to love without condition, to serve without selfishness, to give without hesitation. They are free to be who God created them to be. This kind of freedom is not dependent on circumstances. It is not taken away by hardships or trials. It is not given by the world, and therefore it cannot be taken away by the world. It is the kind of freedom that endures, the kind that lasts, the kind that transforms lives. Those who walk in God's purpose are truly free, not because they do whatever they want, but because they have chosen to live for what truly matters. Courage is not always displayed in grand moments of heroism. It is not always seen in bold speeches or dramatic actions. Sometimes courage is quiet. It is found in the person who chooses to keep going when everything in them wants to give up. It is in the one who prays when they feel like God is silent, who trusts when the future is uncertain, who stands firm in faith even when life does not make sense. Courage is not just about facing battles on the outside. It is about overcoming the struggles with. Every person leaves behind a legacy. It is not measured in wealth, power, or fame, but in the impact made on the lives of others. Some leave a legacy of compromise, of fear, of missed opportunities, but others leave a legacy of courage, of faith, of standing firm when it mattered most. The choices made today will determine the story that is told tomorrow. The way one lives, the values held, the battles fought, all of these shape the mark left on the world. A legacy of courage is not built in a single moment. It is built over a lifetime of choices, choosing to stand when it would be easier to sit, choosing to speak when it would be easier to stay silent, choosing to trust God when fear demands retreat. It is found in the person who refuses to let circumstances define them, who rises after every fall, who presses forward even when the road is difficult. History remembers those who stood with courage. It remembers the leaders who fought for justice, the pioneers who paved the way for future generations, the faithful who refused to renounce their beliefs. But courage is not just for the history books. It is for every person, every day, in every situation. It is for the father who leads his family with integrity. It is for the mother who raises her children in faith. It is for the student who refuses to compromise their values. It is for the worker who stands for honesty in a world of corruption. It is for the believer who holds on to faith when trials come. Courage is what separates those who simply exist from those who truly live. It is what allows a person to make a difference, to bring change, to influence others for the better. A life lived in fear, in hesitation, in constant retreat will not leave a lasting impact. But a life lived in courage will inspire others to rise higher, to stand stronger, to walk in faith. Courage is not just about facing external battles. Some of the greatest acts of courage happen in the unseen moments. It takes courage to forgive when hurt runs deep. It takes courage to believe in God's promises when circumstances seem to say otherwise. It takes courage to keep moving forward after failure, to keep trusting after disappointment, to keep hoping when everything feels hopeless. The legacy of courage is not just about what is done, but about who a person becomes. It is about developing character that stands the test of time, faith that cannot be shaken, determination that will not break. It is about living a life that reflects the truth of God's word, a life that points others to Him, a life that leaves behind something eternal. The price of freedom is never cheap. It is written in the courage of those who refuse to back down, in the sacrifice of those who give everything for what is right, and in the unwavering faith of those who trust in God's plan, even when the road is difficult. Freedom, whether it be personal, national, or spiritual, is not something that is easily obtained or casually kept. It demands vigilance, perseverance, and an unshakable resolve to stand firm no matter the cost. There will always be opposition. There will always be challenges. There will always be moments when fear tries to take control, when doubt whispers that the battle is not worth fighting, when discouragement makes surrender seem like the easiest option. But true freedom is worth fighting for. It is worth enduring the trials, standing against the pressures and pressing forward, even when the path is uncertain. Those who have gone before have paid the price so that others may walk in liberty. Now the responsibility falls on those who remain, to stand, to protect, to fight for what is right, so that freedom is not lost, but passed down to those who will come after. The cost of freedom is not just measured in the sacrifices of soldiers on the battlefield, though their courage and dedication have secured liberty for countless people. It is also measured in the unseen battles fought every day, the battle to choose truth over deception, to resist the temptations that enslave, to live with integrity when the world rewards compromise. Every person has a role to play in defending freedom, not just with words, but with the way they live, with the choices they make, with the example they set. Fear will always seek to control, but courage will always overcome. The person who refuses to be ruled by fear, who chooses to stand firm in faith, who dares to walk the path that God has set before them, is the one who truly knows what it means to be free. This is the kind of courage that changes lives, that inspires others, that leaves a lasting impact. It is the courage that says, No matter what comes, I will not be shaken. No matter what I face, I will not give in. No matter what the cost, I will not abandon what is right. The world does not need more people who follow the crowd, who shrink back in the face of opposition, who live in fear of what others might think. It needs people who will rise up with boldness, who will live with conviction, who will refuse to let fear dictate their destiny. It needs people who will stand for truth when the truth is under attack, who will walk in faith when faith is mocked, who will live with purpose when others choose to drift through life without direction. There is no greater freedom than the freedom found in Christ. It is a freedom that no enemy can take, no circumstance can remove, no force can destroy. It is the freedom that comes from knowing that the battle has already been won, that God is in control, that his promises will never fail. Those who walk in this freedom do not live in fear of the future, for they know that their lives are in the hands of the one who holds eternity. They do not live in bondage to sin, for they have been set free by the power of the cross. They do not live in doubt, for they know that the one who calls them is faithful. The world will always be in search of freedom, but many will look in the wrong places. They will search for it in power, in wealth, in personal ambition, only to find themselves bound by the very things they thought would set them free. But true freedom is found only in God. It is found in living for something greater than oneself, in standing for truth, in walking in faith, even when the road is uncertain. A life of courage, of faith, of unwavering conviction is the life that makes a difference. It is the life that leaves behind a legacy, that shines as a light in the darkness, that points others to the truth. It is the life that refuses to settle for comfort when there is a greater purpose to fulfill. It is the life that will be remembered, not for what it gained, but for what it gave. It is the life that truly knows the price of freedom and is willing to pay it.